doesn't yet begin to touch why Star Trek is a hit in callow terms and something else isn't. It's undefinable.
William Shatner has finally come clean about the mayhem that goes on behind the scenes of Star Trek, which fans have assumed for decades to be a story of cooperation and discovery. Conflicts amongst cast members, including sabotage, feuds, and fistfights, were real events on site. What hidden decisions did Shatner make that made him the most despised man on set? And why did one famous moment nearly make the actors walk off? Please stay for the rest of the narrative, since it differs from the Star Trek you were up with. On March 22, 1931, in Montreal, Canada, William Shatner came into this world. Even the act of his birth was remarkable. At the time, his mother had to give birth at home due to the terrible roads caused by the record-breaking snowfall that buried Montreal. It seemed fated that his life would begin with a grand narrative. It was clear that acting was Shatner's calling from an early age. A famous Canadian actress ran an acting school, and he enrolled when he was 8 years old. Professional acting was already a part of his repertoire by the age of 10. The Magic Flute, a radio program on CBC, was his first acting role. He went on to star in a critically acclaimed performance as Tom Sawyer in a community theater production a few years down the road. He seemed much older than his years, according to many who saw him perform. Right from the start, Shatner's talent shone through. At McGill University, Shatner enrolled in the fall of 1948. He eventually confessed that he rarely attended class and wasn't the top student. Although he had difficulty in the classroom, he was a star in the school play. He created and starred in a critically acclaimed student production in 1950. Even CBC, the network that featured Shatner in his debut television appearance, took notice. Shatner took a huge risk in 1956 when he relocated to New York City to pursue acting professionally. He got his big break when he was cast in the Broadway production of Tamburlaine the Great. The run was brief, ending after just 20 performances, but it was a significant accomplishment for a young actor without any training. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, when Shatner left Broadway, he began making appearances on television. His hectic schedule included appearances on The Defenders, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and The Outer Limits, among many others. However, nothing compared to The Twilight Zone. In 1960's Nick of Time, he portrayed a man who was fixated on a fortune-telling device. In 1963's Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, he portrayed a man who was frightened of an eerie monster perched on an airplane's wing. Playing characters on the brink of panic was a strength of Shatner's, and these roles showcased it. To become a TV celebrity, Shatner almost did it in a completely other way in 1963. He portrays the legendary conqueror Alexander the Great in a television pilot. Adam West, the future Batman, was also a cast member. Alexander, played by Shatner, led his army in battle against the Persians at the Battle of Issus, which was the main emphasis of the pilot. Unfortunately, the network passed on the show, and the pilot wasn't made public until 1968 in the form of a TV movie. If the program had continued, Shatner's career may have gone in a totally different direction, possibly never including Star Trek. It was no easy feat for William Shatner to land the part of Captain Kirk in 1966. A separate captain was in charge of Star Trek in the beginning. The Cage, the opening episode, featured Jeffrey Hunter as Captain Pike. The pilot was shot down by NBC as they felt it was too cerebral and sluggish. Strangely, they didn't cancel the program, but instead requested a second pilot featuring a different protagonist. This is the opportunity that Shatner was given. During that period, Shatner was occupied with other ventures in New York. An invitation to view the rejected pilot came his way. The production value was good, but he thought the performers were being overly serious. Hunter chose not to come back not long after that. Although Shatner subsequently intimated that there could have been more to the tale, the official reason given was his desire to concentrate on movies. Shatner stepped up to assume the vacant position of captain, regardless of the reality. In order for Captain Kirk to stand out, Shatner realized he had to do it. He wished for Kirk an attitude of true curiosity and surprise, as if he were someone who was eager to discover the world beyond. Meanwhile, he aspired for Kirk to have an approachable quality, akin to a laid-back captain of a ship. His idealized version of Kirk was a person who could casually remark, "Hey George, turn left," rather than delivering strict formal orders. Kirk felt more relatable, and the audience could relate to him because of his combination of self-assurance and friendliness. Shatner drew characteristics from two historical figures, Alexander the Great and the legendary naval hero Horatio Hornblower, to flesh out Kirk's character. Shatner injected some of the vivacity he experienced when playing Alexander in a TV production 2 years prior to Kirk. Shatner brightened Kirk's character as well. The original pilot, in his opinion, was excessively cumbersome. Therefore, he sought to make it lighter. Kirk gained depth from this comedy. Not only was he a serious captain, but he was also someone who could connect with his crew on a personal level via humor and laughter. People loved to watch Kirk because he had this great mix of power and comedy. Actor William Shatner was put to the test in an early episode. The good and the bad sides of Kirk's psyche were incompatible. Despite having to portray Kirk's dual nature, Shatner accomplished so in a manner that brought out the character's depth. Unexpectedly, Leonard Nimoy invented the Vulcan neck pinch, a motion that would later become Spock's trademark during this episode. The actor's inventiveness did not end there. William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy frequently collaborated on screenplay rewrites, which produced both brilliant new ideas and major plot twists. On the 1967 episode Trouble with Tribbles, they spent 14 hours in a row altering the dialogue, mostly for Spock and Kirk. David Gerrold, the episode's writer, was irritated by this. Their incessant rewriting became so commonplace due to other characters' lines being removed that by the third season, the rest of the cast jokingly referred to the program as the Shatner-Nimoy Show. However, it wasn't always a joke. While shooting The Paradise Syndrome on March 8, 1968, they got into a furious confrontation with the film boss. Nimoy felt the scenario with Kirk's memory loss should be more understated, while Shatner wanted it to be passionate and dramatic. Production had to wait hours because of the altercation until producer Gene Roddenberry intervened to settle the tension. Their rewrites had an impact on everyone on set, and this type of conflict demonstrated it. In addition to irritating the creative team, Shatner's antics occasionally strained relationships within the ensemble. The notorious incident occurred on September 15, 1966, during production of The Man Trap. Shatner felt that Nimoy was taking over the attention, so he strolled into 17 of Nimoy's camera shots. There was so much anxiety due to these retakes that Nimoy threatened to leave the set unless they stopped. The 1968 film Plato's Stepchildren also had a landmark scene, an interracial kiss between Kirk and Uhura. Concerned about the reaction from viewers, Shatner requested to film an alternate version that omitted the kiss. However, Uhura actress Nichelle Nichols thought the kiss was significant. The studio had to utilize the actual version since she and Shatner ruined every take without the kiss, making sure the producers couldn't use the alternative. That scene went down in television history. Producing Star Trek was no picnic for those involved. Days would frequently go on for 16 hours or longer. During 1967's The Doomsday Machine, the staff and actors put in an unprecedented 22 hours non-stop to complete the episode, which was the most draining example. For Shatner, the day would begin at 5:30 in the morning. She would stay until after midnight to do makeup. He became exhausted from the lengthy hours. After 18 hours on set on October 3, 1968, acting in The Tholian Web, Shatner had a breakdown. Until he had a reprieve, he tossed out his script and would not continue. As a result, a new regulation mandating break times was put in place, although the rigorous schedule was never truly relaxed. The toll on Shatner's private life from all this effort was substantial. During the filming of Star Trek, his first marriage to Gloria Rand ended in divorce. Shatner went on to confess in an interview that he had skipped 217 family meals in a span of 3 years which included his daughter Leslie's 5th birthday in 1968. Not only did he miss their daughter Elizabeth's school performance on April 12, 1968, due to yet another rewriting session with Nimoy, but he even skipped Christmas Day in 1967 to film reshoots for The Gamesters of Triskelion. Gloria's frustration level rose considerably. Gloria said she could no longer cope with his frequent absences and emotional remoteness, and filed for divorce in June 1969, not long after the program concluded. In retrospect, Shatner expressed remorse for having to forego 47 weekends with his kids and other family members. William Shatner's life underwent a radical transformation with the conclusion of Star Trek in 1969. Even with its tiny but dedicated fan following, the program couldn't sustain itself. Shatner had a hard time landing acting roles once the program was canceled. His inability to portray any character other than Captain Kirk severely limited his casting options. Not long ago, he was hailed as an upcoming star. Some even went so far as to say he could replace Marlon Brando. He had lost his job and had no idea what to do now. Things took a turn for the worse in the early 1970s. Even in low-budget films that didn't contribute to Shatner's career, he had to accept gigs if he could get them. His filmography includes Kingdom of the Spiders, Big Bad Mama, and The Devil's Rain. The projects weren't his cup of tea, but he had to get the money. It became even more challenging for him to escape the typecasting that had dogged him since Star Trek, when people began to perceive him solely as an actor of science fiction and horror. His 3 girls, who were staying with their mother in Beverly Hills, were struggling to make ends meet because he had no reliable source of income. Due to his severe financial hardship, Shatner took up residence in a San Fernando Valley camper. He eventually referred to this time in his life as simply that period, due to how difficult it was for him to discuss. Homeless and scraping by, the once famous actor was trying everything he could to earn a living. It didn't matter how humiliating the job was, Shatner would accept it. In an effort to make ends meet, he would make cameo appearances at modest gatherings. He was unable to provide his girls with Christmas presents one year due to a lack of funds. Instead, he gave out items he already had, like as his Star Trek phaser, by wrapping them in festive paper. Despite the humiliation and sadness he felt, Shatner kept on. After that, in 1979, a sea shift occurred. The $35 million cinematic adaptation of Star Trek saw William Shatner reprise his role as Captain Kirk. Among other movies produced at the period, this one had a staggering budget. The 1977 smash success of Star Wars prompted Paramount to shelve plans for a new Star Trek TV series in favor of a feature film. Shatner was on the fence about returning at first, but a large salary and creative say in the screenplay ultimately won him over. After years of struggle, he finally got in shape at the age of 48 by cutting out unhealthy foods and increasing his workout routine. But filming was no picnic. Scenes would often be shot on the same day as a revised screenplay. An example of one of Shatner's many disagreements with the creative team is the inclusion of a sequence in which Kirk does a risky space jump. Regrettably, it was unable to take place due to funding and safety issues. The movie nonetheless managed to premiere in December 1979 to a lot of fanfare, despite all the problems. Critics lauded Shatner for his portrayal of Kirk, saying that he remained authentic while displaying greater maturity. The film's $139 million global total was respectable, but it failed to become an enormous smash. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, the sequel, altered the course of events, 1982. It was one of the greatest in the series and made $95.8 million despite having a lesser budget. With 13 installments spanning 1979-2016, the Star Trek film franchise became a massive success. However, Star Trek's influence extended beyond the realm of ticket sales. "Beam me up, Scotty, and live long and prosper" are phrases that people use all the time. Things like a contest to build a functional medical tricorder were really inspired by the show. Things weren't always easy, though, despite all the success. The 1989 film Star Trek VI: The Final Frontier, directed by William Shatner, presented one of the most difficult obstacles. He had envisioned the Enterprise crew embarking on a profound quest to find God, but the studio had other ideas and forced him to alter his concept. Shatner expressed his inadequacy to manage such a massive undertaking years later. As he put it, "I failed in my mind. I failed horribly." For decades, he carried the weight of his failure. The issues with the film began at the beginning. For the big conclusion, Shatner had envisioned gigantic rock monsters emerging from a mountain, but the cost of their creation was prohibitive. With a budget of only $250,000, it was not feasible to manufacture 10 outfits for the animals. As a result, the sequence was shortened, making it appear unprofessional and lacking in impact. Furthermore, Industrial Light and Magic, widely regarded as the top special effects firm, was preoccupied with other major projects, such as Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, and so unable to provide assistance. The effects crew that Shatner had to assemble was smaller than what fans had hoped for from a Star Trek feature, and the results fell short of expectations. Disagreements among the actors also made filming a challenge. After the fact, George Takei revealed that Shatner was self-conscious about Spock's fame, which had been brought to Leonard Nimoy's portrayal. Shatner felt eclipsed by Spock's enigmatic character, which fans adored. Shatner found it challenging to juggle his roles as director and star due to these tensions. Although he made an effort to give other characters their moments, like as Scotty's escape sequence and Uhura's fan dance, such moments weren't sufficient to salvage the film. Produced at a cost of $3 million, it failed miserably at the box office, earning just $63 million globally. William Shatner's career went in an unforeseen direction after Star Trek. His 1982 film debut was in the police procedural T.J. Hooker. Playing the role of Thomas Jefferson Hooker, a resolute and aggressive police sergeant, was a significant change for him. Initially, Shatner was uninterested in the part and declined it 3 times. However, Rick Husky, the show's creator, persisted. In order to make Shatner more comfortable, he revised the pilot screenplay. The show became a smashing success once Shatner finally agreed, and as many as 20 million viewers tuned in weekly. The show's popularity was due in part to Shatner's commitment. Even when it was risky, he insisted on performing the feats himself. He dangled from a helicopter 2,000 feet in the air in one scenario. "We paid a price for our dedication to genuineness." He suffered many injuries, including a concussion and a broken rib. Heather Locklear was brought to the show in the 2nd season. Fans were captivated by her on-screen connection with Shatner. Shatner became Locklear's mentor off-screen, advising her on how to deal with the spotlight as her career soared. Timothy J. Hooker became a cultural sensation in addition to its TV popularity. Various media were created in relation to the program, including figurines, a game board, and a comic book. Shatner was invited to speak at the FBI Academy in Virginia due to the convincingness of his representation of law enforcement. Even his subsequent work on Boston Legal was impacted by this event. Shatner had a whole career switch in 1997 when he became the spokesperson for Priceline.com. His role as the eccentric dealmaker. The Negotiator began as a 6-week engagement. His association with Priceline lasted for 22 years, and the advertisements were immensely successful. Shatner declined cash payments in favor of shares at one time. His alleged stake in Priceline was worth $600 million when its stock price soared. Although Shatner has never said for sure whether he sold them or not, the rumors spread about his economic acumen. Thanks to their cleverness and comedic timing, the Priceline ads shot to fame. The 2012 commercial that featured Shatner's character's tragic death in a bus explosion horrified many. Actually, Shatner told the corporation about a dream he had that gave him the concept. With a reference to his Star Trek background, Shatner recorded over 100 ads for Priceline over the years. One of the most memorable came out in 2019, in which he made transactions on an extraterrestrial world. Among the most notable comebacks in television history was Shatner's portrayal as Denny Crane on Boston Legal from 2004 to 2008. Shatner contemplated accepting the part at first because he felt it would be too demanding for someone his age. He was 73 years old. However, David E. Kelley, the showrunner, managed to persuade him by assuring that the part would be customized to suit his unique abilities. Superstar Denny Crane was a one-of-a-kind eccentric whose trademark phrase was Denny Crane. Many of the funniest parts of the character came from Shatner's improvised monologues, and the authors even made room in the script for him to do so. The chemistry between Denny Crane and Alan Shore, portrayed by James Spader, was a major selling point for the program. One defining feature of the program was their late-night balcony chats while smoking scotch and cigars. The dreamy, intimate vibe of these moments is a result of their late-night filming. As a result of his portrayal, Shatner became the oldest actor to ever win 2 Emmys for a dramatic role. That was only the beginning of Shatner's artistic career. His bizarre spoken word album, The Transformed Man, released in 1968 and now considered cult classic, was the first album he released as a musician. However, his 2004 album Has Been, produced by Ben Folds, demonstrated genuine musical depth, shocking critics. With the surprise success of one song, Common People, Shatner even gave a live performance of the song at the Glastonbury Festival when he was 74 years old. Among Shatner's more than 30 published works is the best-selling Tech Wars series, which in turn spawned a television series, comic book, and video game. In I'm Working on That, he spoke with scientists like Stephen Hawking and wrote on how science fiction and reality intersect. Leonard, My 50-Year Friendship with a Remarkable Man was a touching memoir dedicated to Leonard Nimoy, written and published by Shatner in 2016. The book impacted many people since it demonstrated their closeness while also sharing the tragic reality of their falling out before Nimoy's death. Shatner is just as busy as ever, even at 90 years old. He collaborated with famous artists on his 2020 album The Blues. Another book he wrote in 2022, Boldly Go, Reflections on a Life of Awe and Wonder, was a personal reflection on his life and work. Shatner continues to push the boundaries of what is possible in his personal and professional life by writing about his space journey with Blue Origin in 2021 in the book. William Shatner's romantic history mirrors the dramatic nature of his acting roles. He wed Gloria Rand in 1956, marking the beginning of his first marriage. He had just begun his acting career when this happened. Melanie, born in 1964, Elizabeth, born in 1961, and Leslie, born in 1958, were their 3 daughters. Their relationship began to deteriorate in the late 1960s when Shatner rose to fame on Star Trek. He came clean later on how he didn't like his marriage since he was too preoccupied with making ends meet to enjoy it. It was 1969, the year Star Trek ended, that they filed for a divorce. Marky Lafferty was Shatner's spouse in 1973. They were horse lovers who spent a lot of time together breeding show horses. They continued to share a love of horses even after their 1996 divorce. Actually, following the divorce, Shatner was compelled to deliver Marcy fresh-cooled semen from their championship horses. It's an odd but accurate detail of their tale that demonstrates the significance of horses to their culture. His third marriage, to Noreen Kidd, which took place in 1997, was a tragically loving union. Even though she had a history of drinking and others told him not to marry her, Shatner was certain he could help her overcome her problem. His regrettable confession read, "I worshipped her and thought I could heal her." The tragic conclusion to their 1999 romance was his words. 2 years after their marriage, Shatner returned home to discover Noreen lifeless in their pool, having drowned. Due to the presence of alcohol and Valium in her system, her death was determined to be an accident. Attempting to save her, Shatner pulled her out of the water. Subsequently, damaging rumors circulated in the media that he could have been involved, which devastated him. In memory of Noreen, he established a non-profit to aid female addicts. Shatner wed Elizabeth Martin in 2001. After what appeared like an idyllic 20 years of marriage, they filed for a divorce in 2020. However, that was far from the last. They reconciled after some time had passed. In 2024, Shatner made it public that they were once again sharing housing. He clarified that they were living together as partners rather than legally remarrying. He spoke of Elizabeth as having zest of life, and how they had discovered a method to support one another without making the same mistakes twice. Shatner has remained devoted to his daughters through all of his marriages, which have been fraught with difficulties. His kids will always remember him as the active father figure, he added. His daughters have followed in his footsteps by appearing in modest roles in Star Trek-related projects despite his hectic job. Grandpa is another role that Shatner enjoys playing. The opportunity to spend quality time with his grandkids, he adds, is one of life's greatest blessings, as it allows him to reminisce and create lasting memories. Despite the ups and downs, Shatner's life remains an inspiration for perseverance. His embrace of love and family at the age of 93 proves that new beginnings are possible at any age.